I mean, I'm not a religious fellow, but somebody's been very, very good to me. And how anybody ever came through that war without getting a scratch, I shall never know. I mean, not anybody that had been in action, I shall never know. How anybody escaped on the 1st of July, I shall never know.
World War I was one of the defining moments of the 20th century, one where not only soldiers were involved, but citizens were also part of the conflict that rocked most of Europe and the rest of the world.
For most of 2 years, war had raged before the Battle of the Somme arrived. The battle was strategically significant for providing relief for the French at Verdun. Terrain of the land was crucial for battle strategy, as the region of the Somme consisted of chalk-like substance, with high ground, woodland and fields.
This created not only hiding places, but vantage points across the battlefield, which both sides fought heavily for. Gaining land was essential for victory in this war, which was only supposed to last to Christmas.
Secretary of War Lord Kitchener was tasked with bolstering the ranks. It took Kitchener's army many years to prepare for the momentous engagement. This battle would put everyone's training to the test, including the Lonsdale battalion who were drilled at Carlisle racecourse.
Local people did their best to help the soldiers, who, despite Lord Lonsdale's investment, still lacked essential equipment. Hundreds of socks were knitted by the people in order to keep the soldiers warm.
I'm doing some knitting. It's pretty difficult, but we're getting somewhere with it.
I think he's doing very well, considering he hasn't done any knitting before. We've almost reached the end of this row.
Not bad. I've added a couple of stitches by accident, but I think it's better now. You've got to thread it through, then put some wool over, then pull it back and put a new loop over onto the other needle. It's very time consuming. With me, it'd probably take a month to make like something really small. I think, it would take way too long.
The Lonsdale Battalion from the Cumberland and Westmoreland area started recruiting on 15th September 1914.
Are you a man, or are you a mouse? Are you a man who will forever be handed down to posterity as a gallant patriot, or are you to be handed down to posterity as a rotter and a coward? If you are a man, now is the opportunity of proving it, and enlist at once and go to the nearest recruiting officer. Remember, if you can get 15, 30 or 60 of your comrades to join you, you can all enlist together, remain, train and fight together. The counties, Cumberland and Westmoreland, have always been celebrated for the finest men, the greatest sportsmen and the best soldiers. Now is your opportunity of proving it. Hurry up! Please take my humble advice before it's too late. The country has never been in greater peril. Lonsdale, now the castle.
I wanted to join the army for a long time. I was quite a late joiner. I joined when I was 24. It's something I wanted to do since I was a kid. I've not really had any family in the army, so I wanted to do something that would make my family proud, and a total change of career from what I was doing when I was civilian.
Well, I kind of got kicked out of school at an early age, so I never really had much going for us, and my granddad was in the RAF in World War II, so I kind of thought, maybe do something like that, try and make the rest of my family proud, because I kind of messed my life up from an early age, so that was the motivation behind why I joined.
The Lonsdales were a pals battalion. Local men who knew each other were training and eventually fighting together on the front line in France. Along with the lack of equipment, the Lonsdale troops were forced to train in harsh conditions. When training first started at the racecourse, there was no accommodation. Soldiers were forced to sleep in the grandstands and in the stables.
There was no accommodation. We slept in, chiefly A and B companies slept in the grandstand, and C and D companies were down at the bottom of the racecourse in the stables. Really, when I go up there now for a walk, which I do frequently, and I see the lavish horse boxes that they've got up there now and what we used to sleep on, I feel a bit jealous of the horses.
When soldiers first joined the army, they undertook 3 months of basic training. This basic training had the aim of building physical fitness and confidence, instilling discipline and obedience, and teaching fundamental military skills crucial for function in the army.
When the Lonsdales left Carlisle, the streets were lined with local people showing their support and wishing them all the luck over in France.
Lonsdales completed their training at Carlisle Racecourse and were then moved to Preseath and from there on to Salisbury Plain. Soldiers were trained to be machine gunners, signallers and to fulfil many other vital roles.
So supporting the Lonsdales and the other 3 battalions in their brigade would be 1 brigade machine gun company, and that would be 16 guns. The real killer in the First World War and the one weapon that creates the most injuries is artillery. It's over 50% of the casualties are due to artillery. But the machine gun is pretty close behind. It's the ability to kill people very quickly and at great distance very accurately. So it becomes an incredibly important weapon on the battlefield. And it doesn't matter how brave people are. If there are people with a machine gun in front of them and they haven't been neutralised, or there isn't smoke or artillery fire or something getting in the way to stop them seeing you, you haven't much hope. So it dominates the battlefield just as they do today. It is still a very, very important weapon.
So here we are making hardtack biscuits. It was one of the key sources of food for the soldiers during World War I. It kept well and didn't go off, so it could be stored for long periods of time.
It was full of sugar, salt and carbohydrate, so it was a good source of energy for the soldiers, which they would need for the hard life in the Somme.
Hardtack biscuits, also known as molar breakers, reserve ammo or Anzac wafers, were usually stale as well as being inedible in their natural state. They would normally be broken up and mixed with whatever else was to hand.
A soldier in 1916 described hardtack biscuits as this: "Is it the delicious succulency of ground granite, or the savoury toothsomeness of powdered marble? Do we perceive a delicate flavouring of ferro-concrete with just a dash of scraped iron railings?"
The Lonsdale Battalion had proceeded to the Somme when they arrived in France, where they fought on the first day of the battle, the 1st of July 1916.
As night fell on the 30th of June, the men of the 11th Battalion moved to their assembly point at Crucifix Corner at Ortiel Wood. There they waited for 10 hours as the shells howled overhead. It is difficult for us to comprehend what the thoughts and feelings of the men must have been in the hours leading up to the assault. The objective was to take Mookie Farm, which was situated near the strategically important fortress at Thiepval.
Well, it's like anything. When the first time you go, you're fearing, you're scared, you see what the media make it out to be, and then you're just kind of thinking, well, you know, is it going to be this bad? What's it going to be like? These are all the kind of things that go through your head. But once you're there, it's basically the people that are beside you, they're the ones you're fighting for. So it's like a band of brothers, basically. You're all fighting for each other. You're all doing what you can for each other to make it as best as you can. I mean, obviously it can be hard at times, it can be easy at times, you can have fun with it, and It's just two sides of the spectrum, really. It can be fun or it can be your worst nightmare. It just depends on what you make of it. You know, you've got to try and stay as strong as you can and make sure that you're not letting these thoughts eat away at you, because if you do that, then you turn into a wreck. And then obviously, you know, you don't know what's coming, and that's the greatest fear. It's the anticipation of, is something bad going to happen? Is it going to happen to someone I'm with? But once you get used to the idea, it's probably quite a weird thing to hear, but we just laugh. And it's probably a coping mechanism that we've all got, but it's the easiest way to deal with it, is generally laugh and joke and think, well, it's not all too bad.
As dawn broke on the 1st of July, the men were ready to advance. Upon leaving the relative safety of Ortiel Wood, the German machine guns opened fire. The cold bullets cut down the advancing troops with deadly efficiency. Many of them tried to dive for cover, but a great number failed. The survivors were then forced to withdraw back into the wood.
On the 1st of July 1916, the Lonsdale Battalion of the Border Regiment had seen their three other battalions from their brigade go forward into the German front line. They followed them half an hour later, and the bulk of the casualties, some 250, suffered before they got past the British front line, and another 250 between the British front line and the first German line. The bulk of those were caused by German machine gun fire. Some from straight ahead of them, German machine guns in their second line, but some from the other side of a valley to their right flank. When I and a friend visited the area some years ago, we reckoned it was probably 1,000 yards away that they were hit from. So of course, if the German machine gunners survived the 6-day bombardment and their guns were still working, it really was a question of getting set up and just aiming at the target. And if they weren't under fire, they did their job with, as they say, ruthless efficiency.
The loss of the Lonsdales was severe, with over 500 casualties out of the 860 soldiers that left Ortiel Wood on the first day, including 23 out of the 26 officers. The Lonsdales were involved in many more battles following the first day, including the Somme campaign.
Following the first day, the battle would last another 2 years. 12 kilometres of land was captured at an appalling loss of around 620,000 British and French casualties, meaning that for every man killed or seriously wounded, only 2 centimetres of ground was won.
The German Empire also paid heavily for the battle, taking between 400 and 680,000 casualties and forcing their retreat and eventual surrender.
A German officer once wrote, Somme, the history of the world cannot contain a more ghastly word. Because of the awful waste of lives for such little gain, it is recorded as one of the bloodiest and most futile conflicts in the whole of history.